and carnage in Britain as a suicide bombing targets a pop concert in Manchester. We'll have a live report. The Boko Haram insurgency creates severe food shortages in Niger. And a Scandinavian airport experiments with facial recognition software. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with the latest senseless and cowardly act of terrorism to hit a European city. British police say at least 22 people were killed and 59 wounded in an explosion Monday night outside a concert venue in Manchester, England. Immediately after the blast, witnesses say panic and hysteria ensued, triggering a stampede just as a concert by American pop star Ariana Grande was ending. The blast happened in the lobby of the 21,000-seat Manchester Arena at the end of a concert by American pop star Ariana Grande. Video from the concert showed thousands of concert-goers, many of them young girls, scrambling and screaming, trying to escape the building.
The lights came up after the concert and everyone was getting up to leave, and all of a sudden there was a big bang and all of the seats started shook and everyone just started running. People were screaming and crying, and we just tried to look for the first exit point, which we were right at the top, so we had to go all the way around.
Worried parents who had brought their children to the show crowded the streets outside the building, waiting for news. British Prime Minister Theresa May confirmed earlier statements by Manchester police that a suicide bomber detonated an improvised explosive device near one of the exits of the arena. She called Tuesday's attack one of the worst ever Britain has ever experienced.
All acts of terrorism are cowardly attacks on innocent people. But this attack stands out for its appalling, sickening cowardice, deliberately targeting innocent, defenseless children and young people who should have been enjoying one of the most memorable nights of their lives.
May said investigators are working to determine if the bomber acted alone or as part of a group. U.S. President Donald Trump condemned the attack Tuesday morning during his visit in Bethlehem with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas.
We stand in absolute solidarity with the people of the United Kingdom. So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters, because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them, from now on, losers, because that's what they are. They're losers.
Grande was unhurt in the attack. Hours after the incident, she tweeted her grief and condolences for the victims. Well, Prime Minister May and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, have agreed to suspend campaigning ahead of the country's June 8th elections. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it is monitoring the situation and that it does not have any information showing a specific credible threat to music venues in the United States. Standing by live via phone from Manchester, England, is reporter Henry Ridgewell. Henry, what more can you tell us about the investigation? Now, I understand British authorities have identified a suspect.
That's right. That's what the police here in Manchester are saying, but they haven't passed on the identity of that suspect yet. Obviously, that's sensitive information at this stage of the investigation. They did make at least one arrest this morning, reports of a 23-year-old man arrested in the south side of Manchester City. And obviously their main task now is to determine whether the attacker, an apparent suicide attacker who died in the attack, was acting alone, a so-called lone wolf attack, or if he was part of a terror cell here in Britain that's as yet been unidentified by British authorities. And that, of course, poses a far greater danger to the country, as another similar attack could be staged at any time.
And we know it's been like a decade since the biggest attack happened last in Britain. What has been the reaction, especially given that authorities were expected to have put in place systems that will ensure nothing like that will happen again?
There is some, of course, shock that this is allowed to take place in a large public event like a concert. But I think there is a realization also among the British public that the security forces here have been working tirelessly over the past decade, and we do know that they have thwarted at least a dozen terror attacks over the course of the past 2 years, particularly with terrorists coming back from Syria, even British citizens who travelled out there. That we do know is true, and so I think there is an acceptance that the sheer level of threat that the British authorities face means some may slip through. Now, I think the main questions will be asked more about the security in the venue itself. This was obviously a device of a particular size in that it could cause so much carnage. It killed at least 22 people. How was the bomber able to take that device inside the venue and create the number of killings that he did?
And we know that, authorities, perhaps analysts are talking a lot, perhaps, about the so-called lone wolf attackers. How challenging has it been to defeat this lone wolf tactic?
Incredibly challenging for security services. Of course, they rely on tactics like intercepting communications between terror groups. They rely on the interrogation of terror suspects and information from insiders and so on. When you have a lone wolf who doesn't necessarily communicate with anyone because of his or her modus operandi, who may be radicalized purely by reading propaganda on the internet, it becomes almost impossible for security services to intercept that, even if that terror suspect may be on their watch list. They can't see and detect their every move. We don't know yet if this particular attack is a lone wolf, though. There is greater concern, really, that this is, in fact, a larger cell, and that whoever made the bomb may not be the attacker himself. It may be somebody else who is able to make another bomb and keep on staging attacks until this terror cell is beaten. We don't know if that is the case at the moment. We're waiting for further updates from police.
Very quickly, Henry, is there any mechanism to ensure that those who come back cannot conduct this kind of attacks?
Those who come back from war zones like Syria, well, first of all, the task of the authorities is to intercept them and detect those who are coming back. Secondly, there is a de-radicalization program here in Britain called PREVENT, which has invested tens of millions of pounds over the past decade trying to de-radicalize those who have gone to fight in war zones.
Okay.
But again, their task is a huge one.
Thank you. Henry, thank you very much. That's Henry Ridgwell reporting live from Manchester in England. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump wrapped up his visit to Israel on Tuesday. However, on Monday, he reaffirmed Washington's close ties with Israel by denouncing mutual rival Iran and speaking optimistically about the possibility of peace with the Palestinians. VOA White House correspondent Steve Hammond reports from Jerusalem.
Donald Trump became the first sitting U.S. president to visit Jerusalem's Western Wall, Judaism's holiest site, where he left a traditional prayer. It was a symbolic gesture for Trump, who arrived to a red carpet welcome in Tel Aviv Monday for the second leg of his first overseas trip. Trump enjoys a close relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and hopes to use that to advance long-stalled Middle East peace talks. One awkward moment came when Trump was asked about a recent White House meeting where he allegedly divulged classified information to Russian officials, reportedly putting at risk an Israeli intelligence source working with Islamic State.
Just so you understand, I never mentioned the word or the name Israel. Never mentioned it during the conversation. They were all saying I did. So you had to know the story wrong. Never mentioned the word Israel.
The rest of the meeting went according to script, with Trump and his family touring Prime Minister Netanyahu's residence. Later, he was praised by the Israeli leader.
I want you to know how much we appreciate the change in American policy on Iran. I want you to know how much we appreciate your bold decision to act against the use of chemical weapons in Syria. And I want to tell you also how much we appreciate the reassertion of American leadership in the Middle East.
As a presidential candidate, Trump pledged there would be no daylight between his administration and Israel. But more recently, disagreements have surfaced over Israeli settlements in areas Palestinians claim for a state of their own. The president has also not followed through on his campaign promise to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Those issues will likely be discussed Tuesday when Trump meets Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas. Trump, who portrays himself as a master deal maker, has said he hopes to work with Arab leaders to achieve peace with Israel, calling it the ultimate deal. Steve Herman, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Well, President Trump is now headed to the Vatican for a Wednesday meeting with Pope Francis. It is the last of Trump's visits to the seats of the world's three Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism and Christianity. The president's stops in Saudi Arabia and Israel were filled with symbolism, ceremony and history. But as VOA White House correspondent Peter Heinlein reports, this one will be shorter, less formal and possibly more awkward.
Saudi Arabia put on a grand show for the president, who chose the seat of Islam as the first stop on his first foreign trip. In Israel, Trump wore a yarmulke as he placed his hand on the Western Wall. Then, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his side, he spoke hopefully of the possibility of a regional peace deal.
I've heard it's one of the toughest deals of all, but I have a feeling that we're going to get there.
The Vatican trip, by contrast, is more about reconciliation. During the presidential campaign, the Pope questioned whether Trump's plan for a border wall was consistent with Christian values.
A person who only thinks about making walls wherever they are and not making bridges is not a Christian.
Trump shot back at Francis.
A religious leader took this disgraceful. I'm proud to be a Christian.
But last week, while flying home from a trip to Portugal, Francis offered an olive branch.
There are always doors that are not closed. We must look for the doors that are at least partly open. Go in, talk about things in common, and go forward, step by step.
The Vatican meeting is being seen mostly as a photo opportunity and a chance for the two leaders to get past their differences, says Jerome Sokolovsky via Skype.
I think there's an understanding that things are said during campaigns either to win votes or because tempers flare. And at this point, both Donald Trump and the Pope probably are going to let bygones be bygones and talk about the issues that matter to them today.
The meeting is scheduled for less than an hour. Trump then heads to Brussels to meet with NATO leaders and then on to Sicily for the G7 summit, his final two stops on the 9-day trip. Peter Heinlein, VOA News, the White House.
Now to Africa, where conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo has forced at least 1.5 million people to flee their homes to other parts of the country just in 2017. That is more than triple the number of people uprooted within Syria and 5 times the number in Iraq. That's according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. Ethnic violence in Congo, Africa's second largest country, has spread and worsened since December, when President Joseph Kabila refused to step down at the end of his mandate. Analysts fear growing violence in Congo could spark a repeat of the conflicts between 1996 and 2003, mostly in the east, in which millions died, mainly from hunger and disease. That's according to the United Nations. The number of displaced throughout Congo has more than doubled to 3.7 million since August 2016. Now, when famine struck Somalia in 2011, the southwestern town of Baidoa was under control of al-Shabaab terrorists, and humanitarian agencies could not access people in need. Today, the town is under government control, and the improved security situation has meant better access to aid for tens of thousands of people. Mohammed Yusuf visited Baidoa and has our report.
This malnutrition center is packed. Many of the women and children are from villages outside Baidoa that are under al-Shabaab control. Abay Mohammed took a risk bringing her 11-month-old daughter here.
If you get food from aid agencies, you cannot go back to where al-Shabaab is in control. They say you have gone to Christian land to get food. If your child is suffering diarrhea, they warn you against your child getting medical treatment. Because of that, I have fled to Baidoa so that I can get medical and food assistance. I cannot go back to my hometown so long as al-Shabaab is still there.
The 2011 famine killed 250,000 people in southern and central Somalia. One difference now is that al-Shabaab has lost significant territory. Residents do not need to travel as far to reach aid in a government-controlled area. Baidoa has not seen a major al-Shabaab attack in over a year.
In 2011, they did not allow aid to reach us. I lost my aunt and uncle and many of my relatives in that famine. That year was very bad, but now it is much better compared to that time. I am able to receive treatment and food.
VOA joined the mayor of Baidoa for his weekly tour. Baidoa is hosting more than 150,000 people displaced by the drought. They complain to the mayor that they are hungry. They have not received enough food assistance. Some, like this man, would like to go back to their farms, but they need help with transport. The mayor also reviews security.
The first priority people has to get a security for themselves. This is a village, so before it didn't have any police bosses. Now it has a police bosses. The people give the confidence that they can stay here and live here, either night or a day.
During the 2011 famine, Mohammed Abdi Mohammed traveled 240 kilometers to Mogadishu. He says it was either that or starve. Failed rains have destroyed his crops in the last 3 years, but he is staying. Rains in Ali May have raised his hopes.
I hope whatever I have planted here I will be able to harvest. This is my home. I cannot flee to another place. We hope to receive help both from the government and humanitarian agencies here and in 3 months' time. I do hope this farm will produce food to feed me and my family.
Aid agencies warn that the risk of famine looms over approximately 6 million people in Somalia this year. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Baidoa.
Want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover? Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, conflict creates food shortages in parts of Niger. Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
Mike Crosley was born with cerebral palsy, which causes his muscle stiffness. But different doctors can give different assessments of that stiffness from their exams. So researchers at the University of Southern California have designed a special sensor glove for doctors to wear to accurately measure the force needed to move a limb. Researcher Haranath Garadadri.
It will provide objective metrics that they can refine their diagnosis and refine their interventions.
The glove also could help researchers test out new treatments, according to glove co-developer Dr. Andrew Skalski.
A lot of things may be very, very beneficial, but we don't have a good enough outcome measure to actually measure it, so therefore they don't get approved because we can't prove that they're actually helpful.
Patients who suffer from stroke, brain injury, and other muscle disorders also may benefit from such sensor glove evaluation. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Well, it's time for our health update, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with the latest global health report news. Lino.
The World Health Organization has issued a global health report called Healthier, Fairer, Safer, the Global Health Journey 2007-2017, describing and analyzing key aspects of global health over the last decade. The report documents many of the achievements of the last decade, such as improved outcomes for mothers and children, breakthroughs in vaccine provision, and measures to halt the rise of non-communicable diseases. However, it points out that serious problems and challenges remain. Many of them center on the sources of inequity and the burden of disease, premature death, and disability suffered by the poorest populations in the world. Sir Liam Donaldson is the WHO envoy for patient safety and author of the report.
We know that some of the worst problems are concentrated in the poorest parts of the world, but are those differences in health between richer and poorer getting better? They need to be tackled, and tackled with great force and commitment. So fairer is the second dimension. And then governments across the world, ministers of health, have a first responsibility of keeping their populations safe from all the threats to health, the infectious diseases, the elements of healthcare that can cause harm. Is the world getting safer in health terms? Healthier, fairer, safer.
And Donaldson adds that one of the major achievements of the organization over the last 10 years has been working with others to shape the future with policies to try to create a worldwide population that is more healthy as they age. Now, like northeast Nigeria, parts of Niger are suffering through food shortages caused in part by the Boko Haram insurgency. Famine has not been declared, but for many people, severe hunger and malnutrition are a reality. VOA Nicolas Pinot went to Difa, Niger, to assess the situation.
A few kilometers from Difa, Asaga Camp houses hundreds of Nigerian refugees and internally displaced people from Niger, struggling to survive every day. You can easily find malnourished kids living among the wind, sand, and tents. Mamadou is 1 year old, weak and hungry. His mother, Shatushiwa, is hungry too. With little milk, she cannot provide enough food for her boy.
Since his birth, we have been visiting the health center. When he was 6 months, they started giving him peanut paste. He is always tired and cries to eat, but I do not have enough milk.
According to UNICEF, about 12,000 children under age 5 will suffer malnutrition this year in Difa. Many will have to be treated at the Center of Intensive Nutritional Strengthening run by Mustafa Saleh. This doctor visits his patients every day. Some are only skin and bones, like this 3-year-old boy who weighs only 5.6 kilograms.
It is too early to know what the odds are for him. He arrived a week ago, very shocked, as you can see. These kids do not eat enough. We need a tube to feed them.
Despite these worrisome scenes, there is no famine in Difa, nor in Niger as a whole. However, each year, this country in the Sahel region of Africa faces food challenges because of recurring drought and desertification, in addition to the threat posed by Boko Haram. According to the World Food Programme, 1.5 million people currently face food insecurity in Niger, lacking reliable access to a nutritious food supply. Back in Asaga Camp, refugees say they have not received any food assistance for the past 4 months. They have nothing to do to earn a living and cannot go back home as the threat of Boko Haram still looms across northeast Nigeria. For now, Faloumata Bukar works as a community relay at the health center.
In the camp, life is difficult. We don't have enough food. Kids are hungry and have diarrhea. We brought them to the health center where they receive high nutrition supplements, but parents can't afford them. Our life back in our village was easier.
The coming lean period before the next harvest will likely bring a hike of malnutrition cases. Doctors here are used to that pattern since the start of the Boko Haram insurgency. Nicolas Pinot, VOA News, Difa, Niger.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. And I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It is time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The future is now as Helsinki Airport experiments with facial recognition technology. We'll be right back.
وخصنا الموت باش غادي المشاكل اللي مطروحه هنا في الميناء ديال الحسيمه.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. A European Commission pilot project called ActiveAge is aiming to increase the ability of elderly people to live more independent lives. The project consists of deploying a series of sensors, both in and out of an elderly person's home, allowing caregivers to monitor their behavior in real time. The idea behind ActiveAge is that carers will be helped to identify risky situations and unusual behavior, therefore providing the opportunity for early intervention. Sensors are used in elderly trial participants' homes, modeling their pattern of behavior and reporting any deviation in routines and habits to the caregiver via an app available on mobile devices. Well, next up, for some visitors to Helsinki Airport, there is no need to go rummaging through bags looking for papers or confirmation codes. Now all that is needed is their face. Finland's largest airline, Finnair, is trying facial recognition technology with some priority customers. Using Finnair's smartphone app, participants uploaded their selfie photographs to an online cloud system. From that, a unique biometric ID was formulated. This enables a camera to recognize registered passengers almost instantly. Well, and finally, July and August are the months prone to heat waves in Japan. But the island nation is experiencing an ahead-of-time bout of high air temperatures in May. The ongoing heat spell has hospitalized 462 Japanese in only 1 week. The country's meteorological society has even popped up a smartphone app for advising heat stroke prevention. Its algorithm considers the geographical location, air temperature, humidity, age of user and quantity of motion to calculate a countermeasure. Meanwhile, retailers have increased by 20% heat stroke prevention products for the month of May. And that is what is trending. And that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate. Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on your plate.
I do.